there's a gig I found out about.
Okay.
You want to go see Hall and Oates on my birthday?
Where's it at? It depends a lot on where it's at.
I, I can't remember. I have to look. But
If it's
it's
very
like,
far
holy shit,
away,
Hall and Oates?
yeah, if it's very far away, I probably don't. If it's somewhere nearby, yeah, that kind of sounds hilarious.
I was just listening to Maneater before I jumped on here.
Why did you
It's a
stop?
Maneater. It's
We
great. It's a
let's do a
great
pod.
song.
Let's do a pod on Maneater.
They're at the Tinley Park Amphitheater.
That's far. If you really want to, it's your birthday. I'll do it. But that is a hike. That means I'm not getting drunk. Are you still listening to Maneater?
It's just like kick the fuck in, man. Oh yeah,
All right, well,
this is chill.
some of
This
us
is
are trying
like
to get a pod going here.
when Chet Hayes was talking about White Boy Summer, he
Yeah,
was talking about the Hall and Oates tour.
yeah, he was. He 100% was. Chet might be opening for Hall and Oates this summer. Hello and welcome to Subject to Blackout. My name is Timo, and with me, as always, from the Name Taken podcast is Mike Marshall. Mike, how you doing?
Good, Tim. How are you?
I am all right. Now, this past couple weeks, we have been watching some classic movies from our childhood, Rush Hour
Have
1
we
and
ever?
2. And
Yep.
we actually got together last weekend since we are both heavily vaccinated. I believe I've had 8 shots. I believe you've had 14.
All the shots.
And
Collected them all like Pokemon.
you got to shoot them all. And we sat down at the end of the evening and watched Rush Hour 2 together. Mike, what are some of your thoughts?
Uh, I don't know. I have so many feelings. I mean, I have such a fond memory of being like a like a preteen, I guess, and watching that movie. Uh,
You would have
I don't
been
know.
a
I think
teen.
it's
It
still
was it was 2001.
it was 2001. So yeah, so I would have been post 9/11, which we should talk about. But yeah, no, I have fond memories of that movie, and I was a
Pre
little bit
9/11.
nervous.
Pre 9/11.
Was it pre 9/11?
August 3rd.
Interesting. Wow.
It's like
Well, I
9/11
mean,
adjacent.
on the cusp of 9/11. Uh, so I mean, I liked it. I mean, I was a little bit worried that it wouldn't hold up for a number of reasons, but I thought it holds up really well,
Yeah.
and it kind of like it still has a great energy and great pacing. It
Yeah,
doesn't feel dated to me.
the thing about these two movies is that they're wholly competent.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Like there's enough plot, and I feel like this is a problem with some of the movies we've watched at the beginning of this podcast, is that these are movies where someone sat down and wrote a coherent script and then allowed two great performers to do what they do best, and that's Chris Tucker to scream and make jokes, and
Right.
Jackie Chan to choreograph tremendous, entertaining fight scenes. And this movie, again, does enough to set up set pieces and then gets out of the way to let Chris Tucker be off the wall and funny, and lets Jackie Chan play the straight man that he's very good at doing, and also just performing excellent stunts and fight scenes.
I agree. I mean, I like the way that you position this. That as compared to the other movies we've seen, this is kind of like refreshing and exciting. Part of the reason I think you're absolutely correct that part of it is because some of the performers were allowed to kind of be themselves and play to their strengths. But also that like the script and the concept was not at any point overly ambitious. We've watched a number of things that were overly ambitious in their world building and trying to explain everything. And it opened up these movies to scrutiny in a way that Rush Hour was not opened up to scrutiny. So even though like a lot of stuff was kind of like crazy and nonsensical, it made sense within the context of the film and the context of the narrative. So it's much easier just to kind of roll with it than to really ask questions.
Yeah, one of the things that I like is that so the first movie, I think theoretically the end of the first movie directly leads into the beginning of the second one because they're both headed to Hong Kong. Now,
Mhm.
either this is a second Hong Kong trip or it is the next one. So they've known each other for like maybe a couple weeks, and we're just leading directly into the next adventure. The one thing is because apparently this hit some production hell issues, as did Rush Hour 3 as well, which didn't come out for another 6 years. And was
Yep.
not nearly as acclaimed as the first two Rush Hour movies, but this one hit it sounds like a few production snags, and so it didn't come out until 3 years later.
Mhm.
Um, and while Jackie Chan looks roughly like Jackie Chan looked in Rush Hour 1, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit trimmer. Chris Tucker looks a lot older. he looks
He
he looks
does, yeah.
way more than 3 years older. So the you have to initially buy into the concept of this is like the next day from the end of the previous movie. However, once they get into it, I think what a key smart decision was by the writer, who apparently was Jeff Nathanson,
Mhm.
was
Wait a minute. The Jeff
the Jeff
Nathanson?
Nathanson. Yes, known for writing "Catch Me If You Can."
Oh, really?
Yes, he also
Wow.
wrote "Rush Hour 3," so not
Sure.
all of them are wins.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. You do your best, you know.
and he somehow managed to write The Lion King, the 2019 version. So I don't know if he has a photocopier, but he got credit as the writer on The Lion King, the 2019 version.
I think he probably just like Control C, Control V.
I mean, when available, take it.
Yeah, I want some of that Disney money.
It'd be nice. But I think the smart thing that he did was he just let the movie open up with the characters being the characters, and then kind of the plot happens to them to get them into it. So it doesn't feel contrived that we're in a whole new place. Like again, they set up this vacation at the end of the first episode, the first movie, I should say, and instead of them immediately trying to work some case or having people out to get another little girl and just regurgitating the same thing, the plot happens to them and they're thrown into the mix. Jackie Chan kind of misleads Chris Tucker for a little while, and hijinks ensue. And I really think the
Hijinks
first
ensue.
the
Yes.
first half an hour to hour of this movie is just, I mean, it's perfect. It's not the greatest movie ever, but it's a perfect movie. Everything that's happening is either entertaining or plot driven.
I mean, and honestly, too, as somebody who spent time in Hong Kong, like I think the movie utilizes the geography and like the kind of like diverse locations of Hong Kong really effectively. I think it like Hong Kong really feels like a kind of like an exciting and kind of like culturally diverse backdrop the entire movie, which is great.
Now, like I said at the beginning, we watched this together, and I
Right.
was thoroughly disappointed that you would not translate for me because the subtitles that I believe are supposed to be in the movie were not showing up on HBO Max.
Thanks, HBO.
So I've seen this movie enough where I was pretty sure I knew what they were talking about, and
Yeah.
even when speaking in Cantonese, correct?
So that was a funny thing, right? That for nearly the entire movie, uh, people are speaking Cantonese, and the subtitles in HBO Max would say Cantonese, but the main Chinese actress in the movie is Zhang Ziyi, who I think people might recognize as the lead actress from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. She's not from Hong Kong. She's uh, from the north in China, and she's a Mandarin speaker. So she just spoke Mandarin, and everyone else was speaking Cantonese, and it never came up because it wasn't for a Chinese audience. So who is gonna care?
And that's
in
the
the American
bizarre
audience.
thing. That's the 20-year difference between this movie and today is that
Right.
if you have a movie that's taking place with Chinese actors in a Chinese setting, it's because some movie studios like fuck it, let's just get the China, audience cuz the China audience is there for a lot of big budget action stuff these days, and it doesn't have to be even necessarily what Americans would say is a good movie, because it gets dubbed over and subtitled, and they can make the movie say
Right.
whatever the fuck they want.
Right.
um, but this is absolutely not made for a Chinese audience, at least not a mainland Chinese audience. Um, and that's something that I've learned. I mean, kind of know just through osmosis, but definitely learned from you recounting your experiences and your knowledge of Chinese and Hong Kongian culture.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's very again. It feels refreshing that it doesn't feel pandering. It just feels like no, this story needs to take place in Hong Kong based on what we saw in the first movie.
Well, and I mean, not to go off on like too large of a tangent about it too, but like there's a particular cultural period where Hong Kong sort of stood in for the West as China, right? So China was inaccessible for films until I think the first Western film that was able to shoot within China was like The Last Emperor, and that was in the early 90s or the late 80s. Um, so it was an incredible challenge to be able to film within China up until the mid 2000s, and then it was not that challenging for about 5 years, and now it's become challenging again, but for an entirely different set of reasons.
Yeah.
But that means that anytime you see China in a movie anywhere between the 60s and like the early 2000s, what you're really looking at is Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has its own tradition of cinema. But one of the scenes that you see used for China a lot, that you see utilized in this movie is, I think it's kind of a scene that's used to kind of underscore a sense of difference. You have one person walking in an incredibly crowded street, and like at a really where kind of like the urban space is kind of bearing down on them. And we have that scene with Chris Tucker where he's, like a big black dude kind of towering over Hong Kongers. But those sorts of things are not China; they're Hong Kong, and the like China as a setting for film and as a space for film is really something that comes after Rush Hour 2, even though Rush Hour 2 still seems recent.
Yeah, and honestly, you hit a couple of great points there. First of all, uh, Chris Tucker being 6'1", yeah, they play that up. Jackie
Yep.
Chan nowhere near 6'1", so they play that up as the physical comedy, but also, uh, the idea of China in Western culture, Hong Kong being a stand-in for China. I mean,
Right.
that continues to play through The Dark Knight in the Nolan series.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, it even plays through Godzilla versus Kong, which we reviewed just a few weeks ago, where again they don't even bring Godzilla to Japan. They bring him to Hong Kong, clearly trying to play to, like we were talking about, a Chinese audience. And you also mentioned The Last Emperor. Ricky Tan in this movie is played by John
Mhm.
Lone. I don't know how that's pronounced, Lone. And he was also one of the stars of The Last Emperor. So a little tie in there.
I mean, both Rush Hour and Rush Hour 2, I think, do a great job of utilizing this amazing stable of actors in Hong Kong. Like one of the
And you would
challenges,
think that has to come from Jackie Chan just being like, this guy can cut it.
I think it would definitely come from Jackie Chan, and I think like you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I think that like one of the things that Jackie Chan negotiated, I know for sure for Rush Hour 3, but maybe for Rush Hour 2 as well, was that he had Asian distribution rights. And so I
Oh,
think that he was probably involved in the production a lot. Now, if they were filming a Rush Hour movie, the Chinese government would be involved pretty significantly in the production. And I think that's in part why Godzilla was Hong Kong and not mainland China. Because if you're going to film it in China, then the Chinese government and the Ministry of Culture would expect to harmonize not just the portions that were Chinese, but the entire film and the entire cast and all those sorts of things. Whereas Hong Kong
Interesting.
is, at least up until recently, chill.
Now we've talked about some movies recently. Specifically, I'm thinking of Mystery Men, where you know, in hindsight, having 20 years advanced knowledge of where these people would end up, there were a bunch of fun, interesting cameos in that
Right.
movie. And this movie is not without those as well. They're certainly not to the level of Mystery Men, but both Don Cheadle and Jeremy Piven play absolute bit roles in this film,
They do.
both of which are playing outlandish characters. Probably characters you couldn't play in 2021. Don Cheadle is
Mm-hmm.
playing a guy who owns a Chinese restaurant on Crenshaw and
He's black.
has a Chinese family, but very much has adopted the Chinese culture
Yeah.
while remaining Don Cheadle.
Right.
And then Jeremy Piven plays a very over the top homosexual stereotype,
He does.
which, you know, is a little gross these days, but I mean, it was funny. It was funny.
We laughed at the time.
We did, and we
Yeah,
laughed last weekend too.
we did. We did laugh last weekend. We were drunk.
Maybe
We were drunk.
I was.
We've been drinking for hours.
That is true.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I was drunk. I was, but that doesn't mean I was drunk. I think one of the things that I liked about this film was that a lot of sequels feel like they retread plot lines and jokes, and while uh, Rush Hour is not immune to switching up a joke by having another character say it. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Right.
They deviate pretty substantially from the first one's plot. There's not a kidnapping.
Nope.
It's not about ancient antiquities, and it's not an evil white colonialist being the secret bad guy. The bad guy is, I mean, it's not obvious, but it's, he's not a good guy from the beginning of the movie. You just realize that when he gets shot, he didn't actually get shot. And then it's all about money laundering and fraud, and it's such a different story. It's very refreshing because you see these movies like Hangover 2 and 3, and it just feels rehashed, and that's why they tire so easily. Whereas Rush Hour 2 really took what worked and added to it in new and interesting ways that make Rush Hour 2 so much better than any sequel to like a buddy comedy that I've seen in literally maybe since Rush Hour 2.
That's true. I mean, with the way you describe that, one of the things I was thinking about actually is Escape from New York and Escape from LA, which are virtually the exact same movie, just one is in New York and one is in LA. But like all the plot points and all of the characters are like exactly the same. And I don't mean like the character that was in New York is also in LA. I mean like the the exact same role exists and that person acts in the exact same way and like all that shit. Like for real, it was like the same movie. It was like it was such a lazy sequel. But yeah, this is not that. It like it uses its environment effectively. Like this movie had to take place in Hong Kong. And
Yes.
like the events that occurred are very much like Hong Kong events. It uses its environment and it uses its actors, just like the first one. But because the resources were different for this movie, like the movie was different. It was actually like a thoughtful and authentic sequel. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you could really see the steady hand of Jeff Nathanson all over this thing.
The Jeff Nathanson.
All right, Mike, do you have anything else that you'd like to add about Rush Hour 2?
I'm good. I just like I said, I like in as we kind of conclude our chat on it, I do want to reiterate that like this was one of the times where we went back to something and it was like, oh, that's as I can still enjoy it. That's as good as I remember.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's refreshing.
Yeah, uh, when I decided that I wanted to watch these movies again, it was after a couple months back during the middle of the pandemic, especially when there was that big winter surge. I was just trying to find something to watch, and I was watching some films that I liked when I was younger, and I watched the first hour and a half of Rush Hour 2, and like you just said, it just still works. They're really solid buddy comedy, action films,
Yep.
and there's not enough of that sort of, uh, you know, there's not a lot in that market these days.
Right.
And it's very refreshing that something that was very beloved, very well quoted by all of our peers, something that everybody saw, it absolutely still holds up. And if you're out there listening to this podcast and you haven't seen Rush Hour 1 or 2 in a while, go watch them. They're really, really fun, and you won't regret the hour and a half, 2 hours you spent watching them.
Hmm.
Hold on, Mike. Let's take a quick little break here, and we'll get right back to Rush Hour 2. Here's what's coming up in the next few weeks on Subject to Blackout. Next week, Mike and I are revisiting the 2004 indie classic Garden State. Garden State was supposed to be the film that turned Zach Braff into a major movie star. However, instead, it just created one of the greatest soundtracks of the early 2000s. Mike and I are going back to see how much this film holds up and how much of it is cringy emo bullshit. Mike and I are also going to deep dive into the soundtrack of Garden State, as that is one of the most indelible parts of this film's legacy. And of course, following that, we're doing the Furiously Fast Film Festival throughout all of June. Join Mike and I as we delve deep into the Fast and the Furious film series, escalating and culminating with the release of Fast 9 on HBO Max late in June.
Do you think that because there are like within 4 to 6 weeks on either side of Lollapalooza, there's like Rammstein, Hall and Oates. There were other bands, Wilco, Sleater, Kinney. How did none of them end up at Lollapalooza? But they were like, yeah, fuck it, let's do a lawn show.
I don't know.
Lollapalooza's like
I think
Journey.
I think Wilco is
Jimmy.
just like cool, and Lollapalooza's like Limp Bizkit. That was 20 years ago. People love things from 20 years ago.
I would definitely say like I really want to see if like Fred Durst looks like a pathetic piece of shit.
Oh my god!
But like it wouldn't be a massive change from what he looked like in 1999 anyway.
He'd
So like
just be heavier and older.
yeah, yeah, just like a really stupid kind of salt and peppery beard, but he's still singing
Oh yeah.
"Ball to the Ball." Actually, we should go see Limp Bizkit.
No,
How would you feel if there was like a Limp Bizkit like pre-show at the Metro
I would
with like
feel. First of all, they should not be allowed in the
Rammstein?
Metro. The Metro isn't the greatest music venue of all time, but it's better than Limp Bizkit in the year of our Lord 2021. There are so many bands that you could book at the Metro that you do not need to book Limp Bizkit.
Remember that Limp Bizkit was one of the key bands to instigate all the violence and destruction of Woodstock '99.
Of course they were.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, fuck everything Limp Bizkit ever stood for. We can talk more about how Lollapalooza is a fucking joke.
oh my god, it is. Do I just not understand the young people anymore?
No, dude, I think it's just a joke of a festival.
All right, sweet. Because I was like, yo, I identify with Riotfest. What the fuck is that?
Like they're
Riotfest looks
I
sweet.
haven't seen.
Did you
No, I
see
haven't
that?
seen the lineup. Riot Fest is
Yo, let
always
me just.
good. It's just like if you like that music.
But see, that's the funny thing is this year it's not if you like that music. This year it's like,
But
oh, for
it's like
real.
never bands that I don't like. It's just like I'm not super into that. I googled Riot band. Jesus Christ.
Ooh, they've added some. Okay, Riot Fest, Smashing Pumpkins, Pixies, Sublime, Lupe Fiasco, Circle Jerks. I mean, there's like a lot of shit that I like on here that you might not like. Mr. Bungle was on here the
see,
other day,
see,
which I
like
was like
My
so
Chemical
fucking
Romance
pumped
is
for.
like that's one of the ones where it's like, well, pass. but
Right.
but like I won't begrudge anyone who likes My Chemical Romance. Not to their face.
Wait, Mr. Bungle might have dropped, which is like a gigantic bummer because it was going to be Faith No More and Mr.
Oh,
Bungle.
Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails is good. Smashing Pumpkins, Run the Jewels, Pixies, Faith No More, Devo, Mr. Bungle, Coheed and Cambria, Taking Back Sunday, Dirty Heads, Sublime with Rome. Who's Rome? Is that replacing the singer who died?
Yeah, that's the guy who is singing as
Uh,
Brad Newell, I
Vic
think it is.
Mensa,
Yeah.
No
So
Effects,
yeah, but it's a good lineup.
Performance
We've seen some of these
Oh,
bands already at
I've seen a lot
Lollapalooza.
of these
Dinosaur
bands.
Jr.,
Yeah.
Gogo Bordello. Yeah,
Uh,
like Boss Tones
like
would be tight.
I don't dig on Gorgo Bordello.
Andrew WK would
That
be
would be
fucking
fun.
sweet as hell. Vescos would be cool. Guar would be cool. Like we would have a good time at
Oh,
this
Guar.
festival. You know what I mean?
That would be fun to see Guar.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like I identify way more with this lineup than I do the
Yeah.
Lollapalooza one. This looks way more like our lineup, like Lala lineups. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I mean,
like if this had been a day at Lollapalooza in 2008, you would have been
if
like,
you're
yeah,
going to have an active band that's way past their prime,
Nine Inch
Nine
Nails,
Inch Nails is
Smash
way
Pumpkins.
better than the fucking Foo Fighters. Like, everyone likes the
Yeah,
Foo Fighters to some extent, but, like, they haven't released anything that's, like, culturally hitting in 15 years. Um,
right. No, I just
yeah.
say
And then
they're really fucking
Smashing
sick.
Pumpkins, if you're
Yeah.
going to bring back a band that, like, has been out of the cultural zeitgeist for a minute, Smashing Pumpkins is
Ooh,
a
nice way to say cultural zeitgeist. You're right.
Smashing Pumpkins is way more of a better choice than fucking Journey.
Dude, yeah,
Like,
way cooler, deeper
what is Journey?
catalog.
Like, Journey is like a rib fest Naperville shit. Like,
It is.
Lollapalooza? Are you fucking
It is,
serious?
man. Journey and yeah, Journey and Limp Bizkit. That is both like
Well,
Summerfest. That's some Summerfest shit.
and what was the other one that I sent you? Oh, I got it. Oh, Jimmy Eat World. Like, they
Yeah,
had
what the
one
fuck was that?
song 20 fucking years ago.
20 years ago.
Who gives a shit about Jimmy Eat World? Why are they playing Lollapalooza? When we saw Lollapalooza, LCD Sound System opened up for Daft Punk. Go fuck yourselves. Like, this
Right.
festival, now it's 4 days, and they can't even fill out 3 days worth of music. It's trash. It got so
We
bad.
had fantastic. We had like some left field headliners too that in retrospect were really impressive. Like the first year we were there, like Death Cab and Ween, which were sort of like really appropriate for the underground at that
Yeah.
moment. You know, but we had the Yeah Yeah Yeahs a bunch of times. We had Arcade Fire more than once.
You had Kanye, like, right after
We had
college
Kanye.
dropout. Like,
Yeah,
and he brought Lupe Fiasco on stage and Common opened up for him. Gnarls
right.
Barkley was before Common, so that's like 4 hours before Kanye. Like, there was, oh my god, those lineups were fucking stacked. And it was just
Yeah.
like
Atmosphere was on there
a
too.
bunch of really interesting, good bands. And now they're just like, I don't know, fucking Journey.
Yeah, and we spent like months discovering shit in
Well, and
anticipation,
that's what I'm
which was
doing
kind of
right now with all the bands who are
the,
Friday
the
at Pitchfork, because like I know some of them, and I'm a little bummed that I'm gonna miss Waxahachie because I really enjoy her one album.
yeah.
And I was listening to it again recently, and it feels summery to me. It feels appropriate for this time of year and this type of weather. But
Yeah.
man, yeah, there just wasn't enough to justify 3 days, let alone two. But Yeah, I mean, Big Thief, good. Phoebe Bridgers, I'm interested to see what she's like live
Yeah,
because a
me
lot
too.
of her songs
Kind of quiet.
are, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it'll be
curious too.
interesting what she does with her set. Um, but yeah, like there's a bunch of stuff on Friday that I'm interested in. But yeah, you told me about the Lollapalooza thing, and I saw it trending on Twitter, and I was like, oh, wonder who it is. And it's like there's a bunch of stuff I would see, but there's a bunch of stuff where it's like
Yo.
this isn't the Lollapalooza. Like Perry Farrell isn't curating this shit anymore.
No, I mean, on one hand, too, you could have made me the argument, like, if you isolated that festival, you could make me the argument, like, oh man, like the same kind of tour networks don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like we just had to kind of do it on the fly and like see kind of what stuck. But like, if Riot Fest and Pitchfork can still pull together interesting and also like aesthetically cohesive kind
Well,
of
and
programs, there's no
yeah.
reason why someone with like a way more resources couldn't have done that too.
Well,
So
and
just saying.
it's clear to me that I would doubt it's just happenstance that Pitchfork is female dominated.
Mhm.
Like I think at least in my listening experience over the last year and a half, like since COVID, either female led bands or female solo artists have dominated the new music I've been listening to.
Cool.
And
Sure.
like Pitchfork is like picking up what the culture is laying down right now, where it's like there's a lot of singer songwriters who are out there doing a lot of cool things, and you have like someone who's up and coming in Phoebe Bridgers, someone who's like currently a part of the mainstream in St. Vincent, and then you have Erica Badu, who is like a predecessor to that sort of generation
Yeah, she's
of
a
like
legend.
unique
Yeah.
female voices in the music scene. Like it's a cohesive, like, you know, focused sort of lineup, whereas Lollapalooza just feels like throwing shit at the wall.
It doesn't
So
seem like there was a plan.
no.
There was a plan for Pitchfork. There was a plan for Riot. There was not a plan for
Yeah,
Club.
it feels a lot like Lollapalooza realized 6 weeks ago, like, oh shit, we're gonna be able to have a festival. Who's available?
Right.
And Pitchfork feels like last summer they were like, if we can get something off next year, what would we do?
Right. That's exactly what I think too. I mean, I get just wanting to pull something together, but I mean, I like that we have these other festivals that were like, well, if we can't do it, if we can't play at that level, we're not going to play
Yeah,
because they're both going to come off looking a lot better. You know, like
yeah,
Lollapalooza is expecting to sell that shit out and make up for a whole year of lost revenue. And I don't know. I mean, you really have to motivate people to be cool with being crammed in with a bunch of other people this year. And I don't think anybody's gonna be particularly motivated to be like, yeah, I will tolerate breathing on a bunch of other people for 12 hours just so I can see fucking Journey. I doubt it. You know what I mean? Like Miley Cyrus, if I could, I would go see Miley Cyrus. I wouldn't pay for an entire day at Lollapalooza to go see Miley Cyrus.
no, no, and like I, without pulling up the lineup, there were bands that I like. Whitney is gonna play. I really love
Yeah,
Whitney, but
yeah,
they
I
were
like Whitney.
way
Sure.
down the card. Like
Yeah,
Whitney should be leading into a sonically similar but more famous band.
yeah,
Like they like right before, I don't fucking know. But
yeah. Well, they
like
used to. Yeah,
they should be the lead-in band to like an indie headliner.
yeah,
It would be awesome if Wilco was available and they were one of the headliners, and you just go Chicago band, Whitney to Wilco.
yeah.
That'd be super cool and thematically appropriate. But instead, Whitney is gonna play on some fucking side stage at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's a slap in the face to one of the best bands to come out of the city in years. And and then like I like Post Malone, but unless he has an album dropping this year, what the fuck is Post Malone doing there? Like I he it's gross how much I like a lot of his music cuz he looks like white trash, but I enjoy it and he seems like a nice guy. But like headliner at Lollapalooza and Miley Cyrus and Journey, Like, what the fuck are we doing, guys?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I would go watch Foo Fighters if there wasn't a better band against them. But I would never pay to go see the fucking Foo Fighters. Not in the year of our Lord 2021.
No, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I was super dejected by that. But, like, that's been the trend. Lala's been getting worse. I mean, even the last year I went, it was like for a while it felt like Coachella and Bonnaroo were trying to play catch up to Lollapalooza,
Yeah.
and then they just fucking blew past and Lollapalooza just gave up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that my whole festival era was before Instagram and smartphones. I think being relying on social media and crowdsourced marketing for branding has like really changed the way that these festivals work. I bet they make way more money than they used to when we were seeing them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, but like they're playing Moneyball. They're just trying to figure out the types of things that people are gonna talk about on
The
Instagram.
cheapest way to sell out our festival.
Yeah, they're not looking for anything that's particularly interesting. Or I mean, they may well be looking for things that are interesting, but that's not priority one or two. That's sort of like a tertiary report, like priority. So yeah, god
It's a
damn
bummer.
young people in there
Well, even like
and their
Twin Peaks,
Instagrams. Yeah.
even Twin Peaks, I didn't see anywhere on. No, I didn't see them
I
on
mean,
any
I
of
mean,
these
Lollapalooza
festivals.
was never good at elevating Chicago artists. That was always a problem.
They tried to do it with hip hop artists, I think, because they were more uh, visible.
Right.
Let's say, just because of the dearth of Chicago hip hop artists until Kanye. But like they had Kanye and they had Common and they had Lupe. I think they did Chance a couple years ago. Um, like they've been decent. Oh, and they had Chief Keef when Chief Keef had no business playing at Lollapalooza.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like they would bring those guys up, but it's just like Twin Peaks, like every I mean before COVID, for the last couple of years would do just a stint for like all weekend long or all week long around New Year's Eve at a local venue, usually I think Thalia Hall, and just like hang out there and do like a New Year's Eve show and do shows around like that weekend and just like kind of like stay home for the holidays.
Yeah,
And
I dig
they
that.
feel like a super Chicago band, and just like Lollapalooza is like, nah, Jimmy Eat World, and maybe Twin Peaks already has plans because again, I haven't seen them on anything,
Right.
but they were a boatload of fun live, and they would have a blast playing Lollapalooza, and Lollapalooza just doesn't give a shit because again, they don't have a theme, they don't have an idea that they're going for, and they're not trying to elevate local artists. They're just like I said, throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
So just to segue, do you know what Lollapalooza's lineup makes me feel like?
You're an old man.
It makes me feel like that is the David Harbour's Hellboy of these festivals.
I thought you were gonna say that Lollapalooza was a man eater. Watch out, boy. Lollapalooza will chew you up.
We should, you know, at some point after we do Garden State and after we do Fast and Furious, we should revisit the Mummy. Prime Brendan Fraser,
Uh,
Mummy 1 and 2.
Also, and
That
uh,
also has a third that we're going to ignore.
yes. Also, I think we need to have a film fest based on the work of John McTiernan.
Okay,
Do you know John McTiernan by name?
maybe. Is he Jeff Nethersville, who wrote Rush Hour 2?
No, no. This is a man who you will know his work immediately once I start reading it off to
Hmm,
you.
okay.
John McTiernan's first film as a director was
Mhm.
Nomads in 1986.
Okay, yeah,
His following three films in order are Predator, Die Hard, and The Hunt for Red October.
nice. We should totally watch those. Hunt for Red October. Like, can we do that? I just want to do that just so we can spend the entire time talking like Sean Connery is in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union,
Soviet
Soviet
Union.
submarine captain.
I'm Russian. uh
Soviet communist, and then Alec Baldwin.
yeah.
Alec Baldwin
Alec
is in
Baldwin is
that
what's his
movie.
bucket?
Action star. Alec Baldwin
A thin
is
Alec Baldwin. A thin and
Jack.
young.
No,
Not yeah, it's Jack something or other.
I was gonna say Jack Bauer. Yeah, it's Tom Clancy. It's Tom Clancy.
Yeah.
Clear and Present Danger. What's the name of that character? It's such a like
Jack
a
Ryan.
Tom Clancy.
It's a
Jack
super
Ryan.
Irish guy.
Yeah, that's such a Tom Clancy like.
Okay, so but then I want you to come along on this journey with me. After Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, and Predator,
Yeah,
he then hits a little bit of a clunker with Medicine Man, which is a movie I've not heard of.
is Kevin Costner in that?
Let's take a look. Kevin Costner, are you on the board? No, it's Sean Connery and Lorraine Bracco.
Ooh, huh. All right.
And then he goes 1993's Last Action Hero, which I will be watching for the first time in a couple of weeks.
It's a great movie.
Uh,
Also, Predator. Remember when Carl Weathers is like, "Do you guys want to go to Burger King?"
Mike, I got real bad news, but I got good news too.
What?
I want to watch the John McTiernan movies because I haven't seen any of them.
Dude, you haven't seen Predator? Oh, Predator is so tight.
I
You gotta
know,
watch Predator.
I know everything about
You haven't,
Predator.
wait, you haven't seen Die Hard?
I've n-
You've seen.
I've never seen Die
You've
Hard.
never seen Die
I mean,
Hard.
like, I know I've seen scenes from Die Hard, and I know what happens throughout all of Die Hard, all of it.
That we
But
really need
it
to
was
save that one
so
for July. That's gonna
culturally,
be our Christmas in July movie.
it was so culturally osmosis into me that like I have never before this podcast felt the need to see it because I know what happens.
You don't know what happens. Bruce Willis just like fucking waiting out in a building for
This
like
is why I
two
want to
hours.
do the John McTiernan. And
Oh
so okay,
God.
so then he does Last Action Hero, then Die Hard with a Vengeance, the
Uh-huh.
Thomas Crown Affair, all of these just really well-known movies. 13th Warrior, which I've never heard of. Then in 2002, he makes Rollerball.
Oh, the remake of Rollerball. Wow,
Correct.
man, the original '70s one is great with James Caan. James Caan was in the original Rollerball. It
Then
totally ruled.
then he finished up his directing career in 2003 with the movie Basic,
Uh-huh.
which stars John Travolta, Connie Nelson, and Samuel L. Jackson. Again, never heard of that. We don't have to watch
Don't know
all
that
of
one.
these films, but those are all of the films that he ever directed. And why is that? Because then John McTiernan went to prison.
Ooh, canceled.
I believe it was perjury. I have not
Oh,
looked
all
into
right,
why.
all right,
I have
all
not
right.
looked into why. But felony convictions. Supreme Court denied his appeal, and went to prison. I believe he got out in 2014, and in his filmography there is a TBA on his next film. So John McTiernan might be back.
Back in the saddle.
And there are a few bits of media which I have consumed over the last few months, which have made me a John McTiernan fan without having sat from beginning to end and watched any John McTiernan movie. So I think that's what our July should be. We should cherry pick a few John McTiernan classics, and maybe do some live streams while we watch them if possible.
Yeah, we should do that. I can't believe. Okay, there's two stupid things that you've said, like completely stupid things that make me not trust you as a human being. And the first one was I thought Blade Runner 2049 was the better movie, and then the
It
second one
was. It
was
was.
I feel like I know enough about Die Hard that I don't need to see it.
No, no,
Those
no.
are two stupid
It's
things.
not don't need to see it. It was there was like so I've never seen any of the Godfathers
How have you never seen any of the Godfathers?
because everyone has ruined those movies for me. So like I'd
Well,
rather
you
watch
just watch them as like cultural touch points.
and I will at some point probably with this podcast. This is a good reason for me to
Or
start watching movies that I've just skipped.
we're gonna have to make a list of movies that we skip.
But like the reason is because like they're so culturally osmosis that everything about them is referenced that like
Right.
I don't I know I'll enjoy them if I sit down and watch them, but there's just this thing where it's like, well, I'm not going to be surprised by anything because pop culture has told me what happens. You know, I think it's Goodfellas where it's like I've seen like 45 minutes to an hour of that movie in spurts, but I've never watched Goodfellas from beginning to end, you know? But like with movies like the Godfather movies and movies like Predator and Die Hard, like again, they were just so prevalent and so talked about that like especially Predator because I've done some deep dives into Predator. I know more about those movies than people who have probably watched them once. You know, so not everyone who's watched them once, but some people.
Like, what about like Scorsese movies? Have you seen like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull?
No. Now those I just haven't
Fear?
seen because Scorsese feels like sometimes it's doing work to watch his movies. Sometimes his more recent stuff is not like.
Raging Bull, man, we gotta watch.
I'm sure
Raging
it's great.
Bull. Raging
Again,
Bull's tight.
it's just like you know you go to Netflix to like turn your brain off at the end of the night. You're not gonna be like, well, I want to watch this movie about this wrongly convicted boxer.
I mean, it's not wrongly convicted boxer. It's just sort of like a kind of like looking at how kind of fucked up and violent.
I definitely don't want to watch Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver is cool. That dude
Yeah,
wigs out.
but
Wants
like
to
not
kill...
on a Tuesday night at 9:30. Like that's when I watch a rerun of Arrested Development.
Fair enough. Seasons 1 through 3. Fair enough.
Yeah, right. So like, like I couldn't get into the more recent Scorsese thing because a 3.5 hour movie, it either has to be the Snyder cut,
right,
or it really has to be great, and people were like, it's not great.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch another Scorsese movie unless Aquaman is in it.
Aquaman or Jason Momoa, or both.
Yeah, Aquaman.
Just any Aquaman.
Yeah, just Aquaman. I need like if there's no Aquaman, I don't give a shit about it. So.
Fair enough. Well, Mike, I think we got a good plan set for us going forward in both June and July. And that just about does it for this episode of Subject to Blackout. For those of you listening along, head on over to subjecttoblackout.com to reach out to us or to find all of our links to our socials, including Instagram, Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also feel free to rate, review, and subscribe. And lastly, you can find Mike on Instagram and Twitter at NameTakenPodcast or NameTakenPod. And Mike, I want to thank you for joining me.
Totally.
Until next time.